It begins, often, not with a thought, but with a feeling. A low, persistent hum of urgency. The sense that one is already late. Late for what? Is not always clear. It is the feeling of the day being a race, and the starting pistol was fired moments before one woke. The light under the door, the first sound from the street, the digital glow of a number on a screen, all of it seems to say, hurry. This is the tempo of the immediate, the tyranny of the very next second. We live inside a structure of time that feels as though it is contracting. It shrinks around the present moment, pressing in. The future is not a distant landscape, but a wall approaching rapidly. The past is not a deep well, but a vapor trail, vanishing as quickly as it is made. The mind, in this state, behaves like a stone skipped across the surface of a pond. It touches down, schemes, touches down again, never sinking into the depth, but focused only on the next point of impact. A fragment of a song, a worry about a message not yet sent, a calculation for the day, an echo of a conversation. Each touch is brief, shallow, and driven by a forward momentum that is not quite its own. There is a modern paradox, a world filled with devices designed to save time, yet a population that has never felt more hurried. It is as if the saved minutes are not deposited in a bank to be spent on quiet contemplation, but are instead fed back into the engine of acceleration. The faster we go, the faster we must go, just to remain in the same place. This relentless now is a taskmaster. It demands attention, but not contemplation. It demands reaction, not reflection. The immediate moment arrives, not as a gift, but as an assignment. A problem to be solved, a notification to be cleared, an impulse to be satisfied. And so, the texture of experience itself becomes thin. When the mind is trained to move at the speed of a digital alert, it can lose its capacity to observe the slow, analog processes of the world. The way light moves across a wall over the course of an hour. The gradual, almost imperceptible unfurling of a new leaf on a plant. The quiet settling of a house in the deep of night. These things do not ping. They do not buzz. They do not demand. And so, in the kingdom of the immediate, they are often overlooked. They become the silent, invisible background to the frantic drama of the now. One might ask, where does this pressure originate? Is it the world that imposes this rhythm upon us? Or is it a quality of the mind itself? Perhaps it is a feedback loop. The world presents us with speed, and the mind, in its remarkable adaptability, learns to match that speed. It learns to think in fragments. It learns to prioritize the signal that is loudest or most recent. After a time, this mode of processing becomes a habit. It becomes the default. The mind becomes a frantic administrator of its own present moment, sorting an endless inbox of stimuli. The feeling is one of being perpetually behind, a runner in a race against a clock that is always speeding up. This creates a subtle, background static of anxiety, a feeling of deficit. The present is not a place to dwell, but a point one is always failing to adequately manage. Consider the breath. In a state of calm, it is a slow tide, in and out. It has a rhythm, a depth. But in the grip of the immediate, the breath becomes shallow. It is held, waiting for the next thing. It is a breath caught in the throat, poised for action. This is the physical signature of the tyranny of the now. The body, too, is waiting for the next instruction. In this state, even leisure can feel like work. It becomes an activity to be optimized, a period of time to be filled efficiently. The idea of truly doing nothing becomes uncomfortable, even agitating. The quiet, empty spaces that are required for deep thought feel, instead, like a void, a failure of scheduling. But what if this now, this frantic, sharp-edged point in time, is an illusion, a convention? What if it is a single, narrow way of perceiving a much grander reality? The modern now is a now of shattered focus. It is the mental landscape of a constant, low-grade emergency. We are told to be present, but the very present we are invited into is this pressurized, demanding, and fragmented space. It is possible to observe this state without judgment, to see the mind as it leaps, to note the pull of the next second, to feel the hum of urgency. One can simply observe it, as one might observe a weather pattern. Ah, yes, here is the wind of obligation. Here is the rain of fragmented attention. This observation is the first step toward a different relationship with time. Before one can explore the deep, slow currents of the long now, it is necessary to first see the cage, to understand its shape, to feel the bars of the immediate. This urgent now is not a fundamental law of the universe. It is a habit of perception. The clock face, with its sweeping second hand, tells one kind of story. It tells a story of scarcity, of moments passing, vanishing forever. Tick, tick, tick. Each one, a tiny death, a lost opportunity. This story is a powerful one. It is compelling. It drives engines. It builds cities. It answers emails. But it is not the only story. There are other clocks. There are other measures of now. The pace of a glacier. The turning of a galaxy. The slow, patient accumulation of sediment at the bottom of a lake. These things also exist in the now. It is just a now that is vastly wider, slower, and more patient. The tyranny of the immediate moment is the illusion that the hummingbird's wing is still. It is the mistaken belief that the frantic vibration is a state of rest. It is the experience of living at the very surface of the water, tossed by every ripple, unaware of the immense, slow, quiet depth below. The water's surface reflects the sky, but it reflects it in 1,000 broken pieces shattered by the wind. It is a dazzling, confusing, and anxious place to be. To find peace, one does not try to still the wind. One does not try to piece the shattered reflections back together. One, perhaps, simply learns to sink, to drift below the surface, where the currents are slow and the light is dim, and the great, quiet body of the water moves with a purpose that has nothing to do with the next second. This chapter in the human story, this age of the immediate, is defined by its sound. The click, the beep, the alert. It is a staccato rhythm. But beneath it, the older rhythms continue. The rhythm of the tides, the rhythm of the seasons, the slow, geological breath of the planet itself. These rhythms do not hurry. They are not in deficit. They do not operate on a deadline. They simply are. And they, too, are the now. A now that is deep and old and wide enough to hold all of our frantic seconds without, itself, ever hurrying. It is a now that is not a point of light, but a vast, dark, and restful expanse. The exploration of that expanse begins when the mind, even for a moment, lifts its gaze from the immediate task and wonders, what else is there? What other kind of time is there to be in? The immediate moment feels like a locked room, but perhaps the door is not locked. Perhaps it is merely closed, and perhaps it opens, not onto a corridor, but onto a field, a vast, open, and quiet field, stretching out in all directions, under a sky that is not judging, not measuring, not counting, just holding. This now, this immediate moment we have been examining, is a curious thing. When one tries to grasp it, it seems to vanish. One might ask, how long is now? Is it a second? A half second? Is it the smallest possible division of time? A sliver of existence with no duration at all? If now were truly an infinitesimal point, a razor's edge dividing the past from the future, then experience itself would be impossible. We would be frozen. Consider the simple act of hearing a word. The word peace, for example. To understand it, the mind must hold the sound of the P dash while it hears the C. If the P dash vanished instantly into the past before the C arrived, the word would never form. There would only be a succession of meaningless, isolated fragments. This tells us something fundamental. The now we actually inhabit is not a point. It must have duration. It is not a razor's edge, but a span. This psychological now, the one we experience, has been called the specious present. Specious because it is not the real present of theoretical physics, that infinitely small slice. It is, instead, a misleading present, a trick of consciousness. But it is the only now we can ever live in. It is a window, and through this window, we perceive the world. This window has a forward edge and a backward edge. The backward edge is the echo of what just happened. The sound of the bell that has just rung, still reverberating in the mind. The forward edge is the anticipation of what is just about to happen. The next note in a familiar melody. The next step in a walk. Our consciousness lives in this span. It is a now that holds a little bit of the immediate past and a little bit of the immediate future. A philosopher once described this as a saddleback of time. We are, at every moment, sitting astride this small duration, with one foot in what has been and the other in what will be. This window is not of a fixed size. It is elastic. When the mind is scattered, anxious, or bored, the window seems to shrink. The now becomes a series of short, jarring, and disconnected moments. It is the staccato rhythm we spoke of earlier. The mind cannot hold onto the recent past, nor can it rest in a calm anticipation. It is simply buffeted, but when the mind is absorbed, it is a different story. When one is lost in music, the now can stretch to encompass an entire musical phrase. The listener is not hearing a series of individual notes, but is inhabiting the entire, unfolding melodic idea as a single, present event. When one is engaged in a quiet, focused craft, the stroke of a brush, the shaping of clay, the now expands. The immediate past, the last stroke, and the immediate future, the intended next movement, are all held together in a single, flowing field of awareness. This experienced present is like the beam of a torch cast into a dark room. The beam does not illuminate a single point on the wall. It illuminates a circle. This circle is the specious present. The very center of the circle is the brightest point, but the light fades gradually toward the edges. The trailing edge of the beam is the just past, still visible, but dimming. The leading edge is the just future, faintly illuminated, coming into being. Our awareness is this entire circle of light. This is the true shape of our now. It is not a pinprick. It is a space. Understanding this can change one's relationship with time. The frantic pressure to stay in the moment is often a pressure to balance on an imaginary razor's edge. It is an impossible task, and it only creates tension. But to be present might mean something else. It might mean, simply, to inhabit this natural window of our awareness, to rest in the duration that consciousness already provides. It is to feel the now, not as a point to be captured, but as a small, moving home that we carry with us. This home is where thought happens. It is where perception forms. It is the place where the world is translated from a chaotic stream of data into a coherent, flowing experience. One might observe the nature of this now in different states. In a dream, for instance, the specious present of a dream can be vast and strange. It can hold contradictory events in a single now. A dream now can last for what feels like hours, or can collapse in an instant. Or consider other forms of consciousness. A housefly, with its incredibly fast processing, may experience a specious present that is a fraction of our own. Our slow movements might appear to it as a series of still images, like a photograph changing every few seconds. Our now would be, to the fly, a long now. And what of a tree? Or a mountain? If a mountain had awareness, what would its specious present be? Would its now be 100 years long? 1,000? Would the passing of a human lifetime feel, to the mountain, like the flicker of a single thought? Would the rise and fall of seasons be a rapid, fluttering pulse? This is, of course, a human projection, but it is a useful one. It helps to loosen the grip of our own, human-scaled now. It suggests that the duration of the present is not a universal law, but a biological rhythm. It is the tempo of our particular form of life. The now of the immediate moment, the now of the digital alert, is only one possible setting. It is the specious present shrunk down to its most frantic, narrow, and shallow state. But the mind is capable of dwelling in a much broader now. This specious present, this moving window of awareness, is the mechanism by which we experience flow and connection and continuity. It is the faculty of the mind that binds the world together. It is what weaves the past and future into a single, unbroken thread. Without it, existence would be, as one writer put it, a blooming, buzzing confusion. The now, then, is not a prison. It is not a point of failure. It is a faculty. It is an ability. It is the quiet, constant work of the mind to create a space for life to be lived. The journey into the long now does not require us to abandon this specious present. It simply invites us to see how flexible it is, to see that this window can, itself, be widened. The mind that holds the notes of a musical phrase together is already practicing. It is practicing the art of holding the past gently, holding the future with light expectation. This is the very same art that allows one to hold the span of a day, or a year, or a lifetime as a single, coherent whole. This specious present is the doorway. It is the small now that shows us how to begin to comprehend the large now. It is the first breath of a much longer, slower respiration. It is the realization that we are not, in fact, trapped on a single point. We are, and have always been, adrift on a small, safe raft of time. And this raft is far more buoyant and far more spacious than we are often led to believe. If the now is a moving window, holding a small piece of the past and future, what of the great, vast territory that we call the past? Where does it go? The common metaphor is that of a timeline, a line stretching back from the present moment into a dim fog, or perhaps a film reel, unwinding. But these metaphors suggest something linear, fixed, and recorded. They suggest the past is something we leave behind. Experience, however, feels different. The past does not always feel behind us. Sometimes it feels intensely present. Sometimes it is a place we seem to inhabit more vividly than the room we are sitting in. Perhaps a better metaphor for memory is one of architecture. The mind is not a line, but a house. And the past is not gone. It is simply another room. In this architecture, the specious present is the entryway, the porch, or the small room one is currently standing in. The sounds from this room are clear. The light is bright. But this room has doors. And these doors open onto other rooms. Rooms that were built, furnished, and inhabited at an earlier time. To remember is not to play a recording. It is to walk through one of these doors. One might step into a room from yesterday. The furniture is familiar. The air is still. The events of that day are arranged as objects. And the act of remembering is the act of walking among them, picking them up, observing them. Then there are doors to rooms built long ago. The rooms of childhood. The light in these rooms is often different. It might be warmer or more slanted. The scale can feel strange, the ceilings higher, the doors larger. When one visits these rooms, one is a ghost. We observe a former self, a child, moving through that space. We cannot speak to them. We cannot change what they do. We are silent observers, walking through a scene that is both deeply familiar and deeply foreign. This house of memory is not a static museum. It is a living structure. It changes. When we visit a room, we change it. We leave footprints. We tidy a corner. We open a window, and the air of the present blows in, altering the scent of the past. A memory, revisited, is not the same memory. It is the memory of remembering. This is why the past can feel so mutable. We are not retrieving a perfect, pristine file. We are reinterpreting a space. Some rooms in this vast architecture are visited often. They are well lit. the paths to them are clear. These are the cherished memories, the guiding stories, the central narratives of the self. Other rooms are locked. The doors are heavy. The mind, for its own protection, has sealed them. Or perhaps they are simply forgotten in a distant wing of the house, unvisited for decades. The dust is thick. The furniture is covered in white cloths. Sometimes a sound, a scent, a particular quality of light in the present moment acts as a key. A forgotten door swings open, and we are pulled, unexpectedly, into a space we have not seen in years. The feeling of that room, the joy, the sorrow, the simple, neutral isness of it, can rush into the present and overwhelm it. The architecture itself is built of emotion. The materials are not brick and mortar, but feeling. A memory is held, not because of its factual importance, but because of the feeling it produced. The memory of a conversation may fade, but the feeling of connection or of dissonance remains. That feeling is the room itself. This house is, in a way, the self. The I, who moves from room to room, is the thread of continuity. This I is the consciousness that experiences the now, and it is also the librarian, the curator, the inhabitant, and the architect of this entire structure. What does this mean for our relationship with the past? It suggests the past is not a burden. It is not a chain. It is simply our own home. It is the space we have built and the space we inhabit. To be alive is to be this accumulating structure. In the tyranny of the immediate moment, we are encouraged to live only in the antechamber, to believe that this small, bright room is the only room. We are told to forget the past, to move on, as if the past were a place one could or should abandon. But to abandon the house would be to abandon the self. The perspective of the long now offers a different view. It sees this architecture not as a trap, the past, which we must escape, but as a foundation. It is the accumulated depth and texture of being. The past is not something that happened back then. It is present. It is the shape of our own minds. It is the invisible structure that gives the present moment its meaning. A word, spoken now, has meaning only because it rests upon the vast linguistic architecture built from every time we have heard that word before. A face, seen now, is recognized only by reference to the great, internal gallery of faces we have known. The present moment, this specious present, is not a solitary point. It is the very peak of a vast, submerged mountain. The mountain is the past. The peak is only visible because the mountain supports it. One can learn to walk through this inner architecture with a quiet, documentary gaze, not to judge the decorating choices of a former self, not to try to tear down walls or renovate rooms that are filled with sadness, but simply to observe. To walk through the halls of one's own memory is to understand the continuity of being. The self is not just the person in the antechamber. The self is the whole house. The self is the process of building, the process of visiting, and the structure itself. The past, seen this way, is not a dead weight. It is a source of quiet. It is the deep, internal space that balances the frantic, external now. When the immediate moment feels too sharp, too loud, too demanding, it is possible to sense the vast, quiet, stabilizing presence of this inner architecture. It is the realization that now is not a fragile, fleeting thing. Now is the culmination of everything that has been. It is a room that is being built this very second, using all the materials, all the blueprints, and all the foundations of the rooms that came before. The past is not gone. It is here. It is holding us. It is the deep, unseen, and silent root system that anchors the living, unfolding leaf of the present. And in its vast, quiet halls, there is a profound stillness to be found. A stillness that is always present, always accessible, just on the other side of the door of the immediate. In the architecture of the mind, if one door leads to the furnished rooms of the past, another door opens onto a very different space. It is a space not of objects, but of mist, a space of blueprints, a space of echoes arriving before their sound. This is the realm of anticipation. The mind, in its nature, is a projector. It does not, and cannot, exist purely in the thin slice of the now. It is constantly leaning. It leans back into what has been, which we call memory, and it leans forward into what is not yet, which we call anticipation. This forward leaning is a fundamental part of being alive. It is the gesture that precedes all action. Before the hand reaches for the cup, the mind has already projected the sensation of touch, the lifting, the taste of water. This is the simple, practical magic of the mind, bridging the gap between intention and action. It is the mind drawing a path, one step at a time, into the immediate, unfolding fog. This is the planning mind. It is a quiet architect. It draws its blueprints for the coming hour, the coming day, the coming season. It uses the materials of the past, memory, and experience to build a scaffold for the future. This form of anticipation is calm, organizational. It is the mind's way of navigating. It lays down a stone, steps on it, and then lays down the next. But the projector has more than one lens. It can project with different light. Sometimes, the light it casts is tinged with fear. The mind projects a scenario, not of simple action, but of potential pain. An imagined conversation that goes poorly. A hoped-for event that fails to materialize. A loss. This is the state of worry. When the mind is in this state, it is not just planning. It is pre-living. It is inhabiting a phantom future, a future that is wholly imaginary, and yet it is experiencing the emotions of that future, the anxiety, the sadness, the tension, as if they were real. They are real in the body. The heart beats faster. The breath becomes shallow. The now is held hostage by a what-if. This is the shadow of anticipation. It is the mind casting a dark shape of itself onto the blank canvas of the future. The mind, in its deep desire to protect the self, creates a simulation of a threat, but it then mistakes the simulation for the reality. It is like a pilot caught in a flight simulator who has forgotten he is not actually in the sky. The suffering is real, but its cause is an illusion. It is a form of time sickness. The consciousness is unmoored from the present and is adrift in a sea of its own worst projections. There is, of course, a different light. The projector can also cast a warm, golden illumination. This is hope, or desire. The mind projects a scenario of pleasure, an arrival, a success, a moment of connection. In this state, the now is filled with a pleasant tension, a sense of being pulled forward toward something good. This gentle longing can be a source of profound comfort, a fuel for the present. It is the not yet that gives the now meaning and direction. But this, too, has its own shadow. When the mind lives only in this projected, golden future, the present moment can be hollowed out. The now becomes not a place to dwell, but a waiting room, an obstacle, a dull corridor one must hurry through to get to the real life that is waiting at the end. This is the paradox of living for the future. Whether that future is a grand, distant goal, or simply the end of the workday, the self is again dislodged from the only time it ever truly has, and is sent to live in an imaginary perfection that is always, by its very nature, just out of reach. And so, the mind is caught. It is pulled backward by the weight of the past. It is thrown forward by the anxieties and desires for the future. The small, clear space of the specious present becomes a battleground. But what if the future is not a destination to be managed or a threat to be neutralized? The long now perspective suggests that the future, like the past, is not a place we go. It is a dimension of the present. The future is, by its absolute nature, unknown. It is emptiness. It is a void. And this emptiness can be terrifying to the part of the mind that craves certainty and control. This craving is what powers the projector. The mind abhors a vacuum. It must fill that empty, not yet space with something. So it fills it with its own creations, its plans, its fears, and its hopes. This is the fundamental activity of the self. This is what the mind does. To observe this process is to find a different kind of freedom. One can watch the mind as it begins to project, to see the blueprint of a plan being drawn, to feel the cold light of anxiety begin to form, to notice the warm glow of a desire. One can simply observe this as one observes the weather. The mind is generating fog. The mind is generating sunlight. It is its nature. The mistake is to believe we must live inside these projections. It is possible to let the future remain empty. This is not apathy. This is not a refusal to plan. The architect still draws the blueprint. The stone is still laid for the next step. But the mind does not have to move into the blueprint. It does not have to live in the simulation. It can, instead, rest in the now, holding the plan lightly, as a map, not as a script. There is a profound, deep stillness to be found in the uncalm. It is the peace of the blank page before the word is written. It is the quiet of the room before the guest arrives. When the mind ceases its frantic projection, it is not left with nothing. It is left with everything. It is left with the full, rich, and undivided reality of the present moment. The shadow of anticipation is cast by the self, standing in its own light. When the self is at rest, when it is not straining forward to see what is coming, the shadow lies flat. It does not loom. The future, then, ceases to be a monster to be slain or a treasure to be won. It is not a verdict waiting to be read. It is simply the space into which the now is slowly, calmly, and perpetually unfolding. It is the approaching horizon which will be met. It will be met with the same quiet, steady, and continuous breath that is meeting this very moment. And the one after that, and the one after that. The mind, held in the tension between memory and anticipation, is like a body holding its breath. It is braced against the past that has shaped it, and braced for the future it must meet. The muscles of the now are tight, clenched in a state of perpetual readiness. This clenching is the tyranny of the immediate we spoke of. It is the habit of a consciousness that believes it must, at all times, manage its own existence. But there are moments, perhaps in the deep of night, or in looking up at a wide, empty sky, or in contemplating something truly ancient. In these moments, that tension can, quite suddenly, release. The mind lets go. It does not let go of anything. It simply stops holding. This is the great exhale. It is the sensation of a burden being set down, a burden one was not even aware of carrying. The burden is the self, the I, that is so busy building its house of memory and projecting its shadows onto the future. In the moment of the exhale, that I does not vanish, but it becomes quiet. It steps back, and what it steps back into is scale. The architecture of the mind, its rooms of memory, its misty halls of anticipation, all exist within a much larger structure, a structure one rarely perceives. This is the structure of deep time. The long now is a way of perceiving this structure. It is a conscious attempt to widen this specious present, to stretch that small, psychological window until it is no longer a window, but a viewpoint. A high mountain pass. From this pass, the view is vast. This is the 10,000-year view. Why 10,000 years? It is a span that hovers just at the edge of human comprehension, yet it is not so vast as to be meaningless. It is the approximate length of the current geological epoch, the Holocene. It is the age of human civilization. 10,000 years ago, the last great glaciers were in their final, slow retreat. The landscape of the modern world was being carved by meltwater. In fertile valleys, the first experiments with agriculture were beginning. The first settled villages, the ancestors of all cities, were just being formed. This 10,000-year span encompasses the whole of recorded history. It holds all the pyramids, all the empires, all the philosophies. It contains every war, every plague, every poem, every birth and death that has been written down. All of it, the entire, frantic, complex, and tragic story of civilization, is contained within this single, manageable block of time. To feel this is to recalibrate the mind. When the mind is calibrated to the second, or the hour, or the day, its concerns are small and sharp. An unanswered message, a deadline, a social slight. These things fill the entire, narrow field of vision. They are the whole world. When the mind recalibrates to the 10,000-year view, these concerns are not negated. They do not disappear, but they are seen in perspective. They are, perhaps, a single ripple on a single wave in an ocean that is moving in a tide that spans centuries. This is the great exhale. The body, which was tensed for the next immediate thing, suddenly understands that it is part of a process that is unthinkably slow. The breath, which was shallow and quick, can deepen. It can align itself, not with the click of the digital clock, but with the slow, sedimentary rhythm of an epic. From this vantage point, the self is no longer the center of the drama. The I is not the protagonist of the story. The I is, instead, a single word on a single page in a library of unimaginable size. This realization is not diminishing. It is, in fact, a profound relief. The weight of being the protagonist is immense. The responsibility to drive the plot, to solve every crisis, to manage every outcome, is exhausting. To see oneself as a single word on a page is to understand that one is part of a sentence that began long before and will continue long after. The word's only responsibility is to be, simply, what it is, to connect the word that came before it to the word that will come after. This is the shift from protagonist to ancestor. The 10,000-year view is the perspective of the ancestor. It is the realization that we are, at this very moment, the ancient past for a future civilization. Our actions, our choices, our creations, are the ruins and foundations they will one day excavate. This thought is not a call to action. It is not a new pressure. It is, instead, a source of profound, quiet dignity. It is to feel the presence of the 7 generations before, their lives, their struggles, their breath, leading, in an unbroken chain, to this one. And it is to feel the presence of the 7 generations to come, their lives unknown, their world unformed, but present, as potential, in the now. The mind, breathing in this 10,000-year air, is different. It is less reactive. It is more patient. It can hold complexity. It can hold paradox. It does not need to solve the world in the next 5 minutes. The tyranny of the immediate is a tiny, bright, loud room. The long now is the vast, dark, silent land outside. The great exhale is the moment one realizes the door is, and has always been, wide open. It is the simple, physical act of letting go of the small now, and allowing the self to float, weightless, in the deep now. The now that contains the slow scrape of the glacier, the rise of the mountain, the turn of the star, and the entire, brief, beautiful, and turbulent dream of human history. This is the stillness of the mountain peak. It is not a dead stillness. It is a stillness of immense, slow, and unfolding presence. It is the peace of the long view. The vast, 10,000-year view can seem distant and abstraction. The slow pace of a glacier, the rise and fall of civilizations. It is a scale that dwarfs the human heart. But within this long now, there is another measure. A rhythm that is both vast and intimate. It is the human measure. It is the slow, generational tick of a different kind of clock. This is the clock of the ancestors. We are accustomed to seeing the self as a discrete event, a life that begins at birth and ends, a single, contained story. But this, too, is a perspective, a way of seeing. There is another. From this other perspective, the individual is not an individual at all. The self is not a solitary point, but a continuum. The body is not a new creation, it is an inheritance. The mind is not a blank slate, it is a text written upon by thousands of hands, long before this now. This is not a metaphor, it is a biological reality. The script, the set of instructions that builds a human life, is an ancient thing. It is a river of information flowing through time. The body, this present body, is simply a single, momentary form that this river has taken. It has been passed, hand to hand, from one generation to the next, unbroken, stretching back not just 10,000 years, but hundreds of thousands, millions of years. It is an unbroken chain of touch. Every life is a link. In this view, the past is not back there. It is not a place that is gone. The past is here. It is folded, compressed, and held within the present. It is in the shape of the hand, the color of the eye, the unthinking rhythm of the breath. These are not our features. They are the features of 1,000 lives, combined and re-expressed. The self, seen this way, is a living archive, a library. It contains the successes, the survivals, and the adaptations of all who came before. It is the result of a million tiny, successful experiments in the art of being alive. One might feel the echoes of this. The sudden, irrational fear of heights. The unlearned, instinctive love for the sound of water. The profound, somatic comfort of a fire in the dark. Are these personal preferences? Or are they the quiet, residual memories of the chain? The ancient memory of the tree dweller. The memory of the savannah, where water was life. The memory of the cave, where the fire meant safety from the cold and the dark. The ancestors are not a collection of names or dates on a chart. They are the very substance of the present. They are the architects of the vessel. And this inheritance is not just physical. Consider the language one thinks in. The words, the grammar, the shapes of the ideas. These are not invented by the self. They are received. Each word is a fossil, a piece of history, worn smooth by the tongues of generations. To form a single sentence is to stand on the shoulders of countless, unnamed poets, philosophers, and storytellers. We think with the minds of the dead. They have provided the tools, the pathways, the very structure of reason. The culture one is born into, its stories, its music, its assumptions about what is right, or beautiful, or true. This, too, is the slow accumulation of ancestral thought. We are born into a river of ideas that was flowing long before we arrived, and will flow long after we are gone. The individual I is a participant in this current. What does this do to the I of the immediate moment? The I that is so concerned with its own, small, urgent dramas? It does not erase it, but it contextualizes it. It provides a backdrop of immense, profound depth. The self is not a separate, heroic figure struggling alone. The self is a result. It is a focal point. It is the present-day expression of an immense, collective life. This can be a great release. The burden of originating everything, of being the sole author of one's own existence, is lifted. The task, perhaps, is not to create a self from nothing. The task is to be a good steward of the inheritance, to receive the biological and cultural gifts of the past, to inhabit them, to add one's own, small, unique signature, and to pass them on. The self is not a fortress. It is a bridge. It is the bridge that carries the past into the future. And to feel this, to truly feel it, is to be part of the long now. This is the slow clock. It does not tick in seconds, but in generations. Its rhythm is the rhythm of birth, of life, of passing. It is a slow, steady, and deeply reassuring pulse. The dramas of the single day, the anxieties of the immediate moment, are real, but they are playing out on the deck of a ship. And this ship, this lineage, is part of a vast, slow, and ancient tide. The ancestors are not watching. They are not judging. They are simply present. They are the ship. They are the water. They are the hand on the tiller, an invisible, composite hand, shaped by 1,000 forgotten grasps. There is a deep, quiet companionship in this. The individual life is not an isolated spark, destined to be extinguished. It is a single breath in a long, slow respiration. The breath is taken in, held for a moment, and then it is breathed out. The human clock, even when measured in generations, is a rhythm of life. It is the rhythm of breath and blood and thought. The 10,000-year view is the rhythm of civilization, of ice receding and forests growing. But beneath this, there is another pulse. It is a pulse so slow, its beats are measured in millions and then billions of years. This is the timepiece of the planet itself. This is deep time. To sense this is to learn a new language. Not a language of words or ideas, but a language of substance. It is the language of stone. A mountain is not a static object. It is a verb. It is an event in a timescale that dwarfs biological life. It is the process of rising, a slow, tectonic collision unfolding over an eon. And at the same time, it is the process of wearing down, the patient work of wind and water and ice. A mountain is a balance of these two impossibly slow actions. We see it as a fixed, permanent thing. In the human now, it is the very definition of still. But in deep time, it is a wave of rock, cresting and eroding, in an ocean of continental crust. Consider a simple, smooth stone in a riverbed. It is an artifact of time. Its shape is a story. It tells of its origin, perhaps in a volcanic fire, and then its long journey. It speaks of 100,000 years of being tumbled by water, of its sharp edges being gently, relentlessly polished away. It holds, within its mineral structure, the memory of an earth we would not recognize. The cliffs of a canyon are a book. The pages are layers of sediment, laid down one by one, over millennia. Each layer is a different age, a different climate, a different world. Here, a shallow sea. Here, a wind-blown desert. Here, a lush, swampy forest. The human story, all of it, all 10,000 years of our cities and our songs, would be, in this great stone book, a layer so thin, it is barely the thickness of a single page. Perhaps only a faint, final pencil mark on the top. This perspective is not meant to diminish. It is meant to unburden. The anxieties of the immediate moment, the dramas of a single day, when held against the lifespan of a stone, are seen in a different light. They are real, but they are light. They are a brief electrical charge, passing through a medium that is ancient. The stone is the medium. It is the patient, silent, and abiding context for all of our frantic, temporary life. It is the floor of the world. It is the stillness that holds all our movement. The language of stone is one of pressure, of heat, of immense patience, and of inevitable, slow change. It does not hurry. It cannot be rushed. It simply is, and in its being, it records. It is the planet's memory. And then, there is the other half of this language. One can look down at the rock and feel the deep past of the earth, or one can look up and feel the deep past of the universe. This is the language of starlight. The light that touches the eye from a distant star is not now. It is an echo. It is a messenger from a then that is impossibly remote. The light from the star nearest our sun is more than 4 years old. The light from the stars in a constellation might be hundreds of years old. The light from a nebula, a glowing cloud where new stars are being born, could be thousands of years old. The light from a neighboring galaxy, the faint, misty patch of light in the night sky, is over 2 million years old. When that light began its journey, the human mind, the mind that is now perceiving it, did not exist. The ancestral clock was just beginning its very first ticks. This is the great paradox of the night sky. It is a time machine. In a single glance, the specious present of the human mind is touched by light from 1,000 different eras. The now of the observer becomes a meeting place for all of history, a place where the ancient past and the immediate present touch and are, for a moment, the same event. The now is no longer a small, pressurized room. It is a vast, open field, and these ancient, photonic messengers are arriving constantly from every direction in time. In this context, the self is not a solid, central thing. It is a moment of perception. It is a brief, complex pattern, an arrangement of atoms that has woken up on the surface of a planet, itself ancient. And this pattern has developed the capacity to see the light from which it, itself, was forged. For the atoms of the body, the carbon, the iron, the oxygen, were created in the hearts of stars that lived and died billions of years ago. We are, in the most literal sense, made of starlight. We are made of the ash of dead suns. The language of starlight, then, is a language of origins. It speaks of cycles of creation and dispersal. It speaks of unimaginable voids, of silent, cold distances, and of the inevitable laws of physics unfolding across cosmic time. The stone beneath and the star above are speaking the same language. It is a language without words, without intention, without care. The universe is not aware of our presence. The stone does not know it is being held. The star does not know it is being seen. And in this vast, impersonal silence, there is a profound peace. It is the release from the burden of importance. It is the quiet of simply being a part of the stone, a part of the starlight, a brief, sentient, and beautiful expression of the long now itself. We have spoken of time as a line, an arrow, shot from the past, through the present, into the void of the future. This is the source of much anxiety, the feeling that moments are spent, that they vanish, that they are lost forever. We have also spoken of time as an immense depth, the deep, geological time of stone, the vast, cosmic time of starlight. These scales are so large, they can seem alien, impersonal. But there is another pattern. It is the pattern in which we live. It is not a line, and it is not a static depth. It is a circle. It is the rhythm of return. The earth, in its turning, provides the most fundamental pulse. The slow, steady rotation that draws the world into shadow, and then, just as reliably, returns it to the light. This is the cycle of day and night. It is so familiar, one can forget its profundity. It is not just the changing of the light. It is the turning of a planet. It is a great, physical, somatic rhythm. The air cools. The world grows quiet. The processes of life shift. The mind, too, is pulled by this tide, toward introspection, toward rest. And then, the return. The slow, gray light of the pre-dawn. The inevitable, silent, and triumphant arrival of the sun. It is a promise, kept every single day. The now of midnight is not an end. It is a passage. The now of noon is not a permanent state. It is a zenith, which will, just as surely, begin its gentle decline. This daily cycle is held within a larger one. The moon, in its own, slower orbit, presents a changing face. It waxes from a sliver of new light to a full, luminous disk. It wanes back into darkness. This, too, is a clock. It is a clock that measures the month. It is a clock that pulls on the great oceans of the world, a silent, gravitational breath. The tides, rising and falling, in and out, are the pulse of this lunar rhythm. They are a physical expression of a celestial, cyclical relationship. And this cycle, in turn, is held within the greatest of the human-scale rhythms, the turning of the seasons. This is the long now made tangible. It is the result of the Earth's slow, tilted orbit around the sun. It is a journey of a year, so vast that we do not feel the movement, yet we experience its effects with every part of our being. The seasons are not just changes in weather. They are chapters in a story that repeats, and in its repetition, finds a kind of eternity. There is the rhythm of spring. It is the return of life, but it is also the return of potential. It is the expression of the planet's deep, stored memory. The seed, dormant in the cold ground, holds the blueprint of the flower. It does not die. It waits. Spring is the now of unfolding. There is the rhythm of summer, the time of fullness. The light is long. The energy is at its peak. It is the now of expression. Then there is autumn. This is, perhaps, the most philosophical of the seasons. It is the rhythm of release. It is a lesson in the beauty of impermanence, taught on a planetary scale. The leaves, their work done, do not cling. They turn brilliant in a final, graceful gesture, and they let go. The tree does not mourn this loss. It is part of the cycle. This letting go is necessary. It is the preparation for the quiet to come. The falling leaf is not an end. It is a transformation. It returns to the earth, to become the soil, to feed the roots. And then, winter, the rhythm of rest. The world is not dead. It is fallow. It is in a state of profound, necessary, and creative quiet. It is the now of abiding. The energy has drawn inward. The seeds are held. The great, slow clock of the earth is in its dark, contemplative phase, gathering its strength for the inevitable return of spring. To live in linear time is to be haunted by endings. To live in cyclical time is to be assured of beginnings. The rhythms of return are the planet's great, slow, calming reassurance. They teach a different way of being. They show that time is not a scarce resource to be managed, but a vast, repeating pattern to be inhabited. The anxiety of the immediate, now, comes from the belief that this moment is singular, that it will be lost, that it must be seized. The peace of the long now comes from the understanding that this now is a kind of moment. It is an autumn afternoon, a state that has been before and will be again. It is a winter evening, a familiar quiet, shared with billions of such evenings, past and future. This is not a story of progress. It is a story of maintenance, of balance, of return. It is the tide, which always comes home to the shore. It is the moon, which always rebuilds itself in the dark. It is the spring, which has never, in all of deep time, forgotten to arrive. We have journeyed through the architecture of the mind, walked the halls of memory, and stood in the misty corridors of anticipation. We have looked out from the high pass of the 10,000-year view, felt the pulse of the ancestral clock, and touched the ancient, slow languages of stone and starlight. We have rested in the great, reassuring rhythms of the turning earth. Through all of this, a question remains. A quiet, central question. Who, or what, is the traveler? Who is this I that remembers and anticipates and observes? The common sense, the deepest intuition, is that of a solid, continuous self. A core, an essence. A me that was there yesterday, is here now, and will be there tomorrow. This I is the one who feels hurried by the immediate, and the one who seeks the calm of the long view. It is the protagonist of the story. But what if this, too, is a habit of perception? What if the self is not a solid thing at all? What if the self is not a noun, but a verb? Consider a wave moving across the surface of the deep ocean. It has a shape, a form, a distinct existence. It travels. It has a beginning, a crest, and an end as it breaks upon the shore. We can point to it. There, we say, is a wave. But what is the wave? It is not a thing moving. It is a process moving. The water itself is not traveling across the ocean. The water is simply rising and falling. The energy, the pattern, is what moves through the water. The wave is a form, a transient shape that the water takes on. Or consider a flame. A candle flame is a beautiful, distinct thing. It has a shape, a color, a warmth. But it is not solid. It is not static. It is a rapid, visible process. It is the transformation of fuel, wax, and air into heat and light. The flame is a stable pattern of combustion. It only exists moment to moment by changing. It must consume, it must transform, it must release. If the process stops, the flame is not dead. The flame, the thing we were pointing to, simply is not. The self, one might consider, is much more like the wave or the flame. It is not a solid entity, a pilot inside the machine of the body. It is the process of being that body. It is the pattern of energy that is flowing through it. The I is not the owner of the thoughts. The I is the process of thinking. It is the electrical and chemical dance of the brain, a pattern so complex that it has become aware of itself. The I is not the keeper of the memories. The I is the process of remembering. It is the very act of the present mind illuminating the architecture of the past. This is a profound shift in perspective. The self is not a static object, an event that began at birth and will one day end. The self is a process happening right now. It is a slow metabolic flame. It is a complex neurological wave. This I is a pattern suspended in time. It is suspended in the flow of biology, consuming air and water and light. It is suspended in the flow of information, consuming sensations and experiences and ideas. And the shape of this pattern, the self, is constantly being redrawn. The self of this moment is not identical to the self of a year ago or even yesterday. The cells of the body have been replaced. The thoughts have changed. The memories have been subtly altered by the very act of revisiting them. It is the same river, but it is never the same water. This is why we spoke of the architecture of memory and the shadow of anticipation. The flame of the self is shaped by the fuel it has consumed, the past, and by the air it is drawing in, the future. It is a process that has duration, a process that binds time. This can be a deeply calming realization. The solid, static self is a heavy thing. It must be protected. It must be defended. It can be wounded. It can be threatened with non-existence. The protagonist of the story feels a great and terrible pressure. But a process does not need to be defended. It only needs to be allowed to continue. A wave does not try to be a wave. It just is the rising and falling of the water. A flame does not worry about its existence. It just is the process of combustion. The anxiety of the immediate now is the feeling of a solid self, braced against the terrifying flow of time. It is the I trying to stand still, while the universe, by its very nature, flows. The peace of the long now is the realization that the self is not separate from the flow. The self is the flow. It is a part of the great, turning rhythms of the earth. It is a brief, beautiful, and complex pattern in the vast, unfolding story of deep time. The self is not a stone. It is water. It is not an object. It is music. One can observe this process. This is the unique quality of this particular pattern. The flame, in its complexity, has become conscious. It can observe its own flickering. One can feel the flow of sensation, the coolness of the air, the pressure of a surface. One can watch the thoughts arise, like bubbles in a stream, float for a moment, and then pop. One can feel the echoes of memory and the gentle pull of anticipation. The observer is not separate from this. The observer is this. It is the pattern observing its own shape. The self, then, is not a thing to be found, or lost, or saved. It is a state of being, to be inhabited. It is not an event, but a process. It is not a solid object, but a condition of suspension. It is being suspended in time. It is the verb to be, unfolding in its own, unique, and unrepeatable present tense. A tense that includes its own past and its own future in every unfolding moment. A pattern as natural as a spiral in a shell, as fleeting as a cloud, and as much a part of the universe as the stone and the starlight from which it is made. And so, we arrive at a place of quiet. It is not a quiet that is defined by the absence of sound. It is a quiet of perspective, It is the deep, internal stillness that is found, not by shutting out the world, but by understanding one's place within it. This is the quiet reverence of the long now. It is the feeling that comes from sensing the immense, slow, and stable processes that hold the frantic, immediate moment in their care. It is the reverence one feels for a single, perfect stone, a reverence for the eons of time, the pressure, the slow tumbling in ancient waters that were required to bring it to that simple state of being. It is the reverence one feels for a single, living leaf, a reverence for the unbroken, billion-year chain of life, the ancestral clock, the slow, perfect, and tested wisdom of biology that is expressed in that simple, green form. It is the reverence one feels for a beam of starlight, a reverence for the cosmic distances, the vast, impersonal furnaces of stars, and the silent, patient laws of the universe that carried that photon for 1,000,000 years to meet the brief, conscious flicker of a human mind. This reverence is a state of being. It is not an idea, but a feeling. It is the feeling of the process, the wave, the flame, that which we call the self, as it recognizes the vastness of the medium it exists within. The wave recognizes the ocean. The flame recognizes the air. The self recognizes the now as something ancient, deep, and wide. In this state of quiet reverence, the immediate moment is not lost. It is not transcended or escaped. It is, for the first time, truly seen. It is seen, not as a point of pressure, but as a point of contact. The immediate now is the only place where the self touches the rest of time. It is the single, moving point where the process of being intersects with the great, cyclical, and linear patterns of existence. This now is no longer an enemy, a taskmaster. It is a gift. It is the aperture through which all of time is perceived. The long now is the understanding that this tiny aperture opens onto a view of infinity. The anxiety of the solid self, the I that must be defended, begins to dissolve. The self is not a fortress, but a bridge. And a bridge does not worry about the river that flows beneath it. It is defined by the river. It exists because of the river. Its purpose is to touch both banks. The I, as a process, can let go of the need to control. It can cease its frantic projection into the future and its mournful curation of the past. It can, instead, simply be the process. This is the state of yielding, not of giving up, but of giving way. It is the yielding of the tree in autumn, letting go of the leaf, trusting in the return of spring. It is the yielding of the body to the pull of the earth, the simple, honest acknowledgement of weight. It is the yielding of the conscious mind to the rhythms of the planet. The earth, in its great, slow turning, is moving, now, into its own period of quiet. The cycle of day and night is not a human invention. It is a physical law, a planetary breath. And the human body, an expression of the planet, is designed to breathe with it. The desire for rest is the body's alignment with the long now. It is the whisper of the ancestral clock, the wisdom of 1,000 generations, knowing that this is the time of restoration. This is the time of the fallow. The mind, in this state, does not need to hold on. It can float. It can be carried. It can be the leaf, resting on the surface of the stream. It does not need to know the destination. It is enough to be part of the flow. It can be the stone, resting at the bottom of the river. It is enough to feel the slow, steady, and patient current of time passing over it. This quiet reverence is the final exhale. It is the release of the small, clenched now, and the gentle, restful acceptance of the great, deep, and abiding now. The now that holds the stone. The now that holds the star. The now that holds the ancestor. The now that holds the self. It is a now that is not a point of time, but a state of being. A state of immense, profound, and simple peace. A stillness that is not empty, but full. Full of the past, pregnant with the future, and abiding, always, in the quiet reverence of the long now.